Okay, I hope you guys can see my screen now. This is paper number one, History and Culture of Pakistan of May-June 2021, 0448 IGCSE. Because the same paper is for O levels as well, so we're gonna just go over one paper. Okay. So um I'm sharing the insert first of all, because again, for section A, this is the compulsory section where you will be asked to attempt the source-based questions, source A and source B. So let's go over source A and let's see the type of answers we're supposed to construct for this one. And we'll look at the examiner's report side by side to see the requirements of the examiners, what they expect from you guys in this section. So source A says we must say that today, behind the ranks of one of the finest armies in the world, there are millions of Indian people ready to cooperate with the British government in defense of an empire to which we are proud to belong. In the presence of a common enemy, be it Germany or anyone else, we set aside our differences. India has always been loyal. Our future development in terms of prosperity and the recognition of our rights as citizens depends on our loyalty now in Britain's hour of need. This is basically adapted from an editorial in the Calcutta Bengali newspaper commenting on India's entry into the First World War in 1914. So, if you understand the context of this text, it says it's basically an Indian perspective over Indians' participation in the World War One in 1914. And just by understanding that, just by if you want to understand the text, Indians, in according to this text, are happy to be a part of the British Army. They're happy to be loyal to the British Army or to support the British Army. And they think that this is the way to go for future developments in India, for future prosperity in India. Now, as per source A, I'm going to share the question paper side by side. The question says, okay, according to source A, what were the reasons for India supporting Britain in the First World War? So since source-based question, the first one is supposed to be written as it is from the text. So we have to pick up any three reasons that are there in the source that comment on the reasons for India supporting the Britain in the First World War. Now, guys, let's try to highlight the reasons. We must say that today, behind the ranks of one of the finest armies, there are millions of Indian people ready to cooperate with the British government in defense of an empire to which we are proud to belong. So the first reason is defense of the Indian Empire, right? You can pick this up as it is. This will be your first reason. In the presence of a common enemy, be it Germany or anyone else, we set aside our differences. India has always been loyal. Our future development in terms of prosperity and the recognition of our rights as citizens depends on the loyalty. Okay. So you can say that another reason is the common enemy, which is Germany, or you can also pick up that India has always been loyal, their loyalty or the future development, the prosperity, it depends, and the recognition of the rights depends on the loyalty. So this could be the second reason, their loyalty as of because of prosperity, and then because their rights depend on this loyalty. This could be the third reason. So you can pick up these 3 points as they are given in the text, and this will be your answer. I hope this is clear.
Yes, sir. Do we have to attempt this one?
No, no, not right now. We're just going to go over
Okay.
the entire paper, then you'll attempt it later on. All right. So let's have a look at the examiner's report side by side and see what they're expecting from us in this question. So, question one, part A, most responses scored maximum marks, although very occasionally some provided their own thoughts rather than what was given in the extract. Guys, you're not supposed to provide your own thoughts in this question. Remember, this is what they're advising again. So, this examiner report is the official resource of the Cambridge that makes comments on how the candidates attempted a paper in that particular year. You guys should make a habit of studying examiner reports. The examiner over here is saying that you cannot make your own thoughts. You should always stick to what's provided in the source. In this question, candidates must refer to the source and not describe the topic being examined. No description is required. You must be very specific. You must be very factual when it comes to answering this question. Okay, let's look at source B now. Source B is a picture. And it's always a good idea to read the captions first. A vintage postcard celebrating the coronation of King George V and Queen Mary in Delhi in 1911. This coronation darbar of 1911 Delhi, coronation scene. So coronation is when a new king or a queen is crowned into power. So you see, um, this is a darbar in Delhi in 1911, and um, try to see the details that you can pick up from this picture, and then make historical references. 1911 was the time when Bengal partition was reversed, if you guys can relate. Okay, it was the time when the reversal happened, and Hindus were maybe fine, Muslims were not happy, and the British were in their full power, trying to expand their control. They had conquered Bengal, right? The richest province. Now this coronation shows, you see the discipline, you see the people dressed up. This could be the British Army or the British Army. All of them are standing in full discipline, right? And then there are some people that you can see on the sides, they're sitting. By the dressing, we can maybe make a comment that they could be Indians, right? And then there's a stage in the front where the coronation is happening. There's this like a huge area where all of them are gathered. These are all the depictions that we can make up from this picture. Is there anything else you guys are noticing? You can let me know right now. No? Okay, we'll go with these details. What can we learn from source B about the British presence in India at this time? Now, you need to write down two reasons for this about British presence in India. Now, the best way of answering this question is that you always write one information that you're picking up from the picture, and then you describe it. And your description must make a reference to the historical events. Then you write down second information that you pick up from the picture, and then you describe it the same way. And your description must refer to the context of history and must answer this question side by side as well. So, if we make up the first inference from this, what could be the first inference based on the picture that we just saw about British presence in India? Can we say that their presence was extremely influential? They were literally holding this coronation in India, right?
Yes.
Just by even you see the number of British, they're outnumbering
Yes.
them. So they were extremely powerful, they were extremely influential. So this is your first observation. That they're more in number, they're outnumbering the Indians. And now, what's the impact of this? You cannot just leave a reason that way. You have to make an impact as well. That the impact is the British were were sort of dominating over the Indians this way. They were telling that they were superior, they were the rulers, right? And then the second inference could be the discipline of the British army or the Britishers at that time, how culturally superior they were, right? And that we have inferred this by looking at these straight lines that have been made over here, right? So these could be your inferences. And now let's see what the examiners say. Part B, which was about the British presence in India, produced a range of responses from candidates. The question drew several strong responses which related the features of the source to the question and made at least one valid inference. Such responses, which were awarded level 3 is highest, usually referred to the soldiers and the ceremonial nature of the equation. However, a small number of answers did not comment on the source and wrote generally about the topic instead. Guys, so this is important that you don't have to just keep on writing about the coronation or the events of 1911. Your answer has to be about the source itself. It has to be about the picture, the details in the picture. Candidates are reminded that they must refer to the source in answering the question to avoid scoring 0 marks. Yeah. So even if you make a little reference, you will still score marks because everyone is capable of picking up details. You've gone through these topics in history. You guys know what's happening, right? So this is important here. Um, any questions?
No. No.
Okay, now, part C. Explain the importance of the Lucknow Pact of 1916. Now, this part C is a 7 mark question. You guys know how to attempt 7 mark questions, right? Three reasons. Importance of Lucknow Pact of 1916. I can share the notes here and we can go over this particular, sorry, we can go over this particular answer as well. Importance of Lucknow Pact. So this is the set of notes and yeah, okay. Why was Lucknow Pact signed? Describe the importance of, yeah, the answer. Okay, most look, you can also expect questions to be repeated. You see, all of these questions are there in the notes as well. So if you study these notes very carefully, there's a good chance that you might be able to attempt many of the questions that are coming in the paper. So this question. In the Lucknow Pact, the Congress party accepted the separate electorate system and more weightage of Muslims in Muslim minority areas. Muslims in turn decided to give more weightage to Hindus in Hindu majority areas. Now, this was a compromising stance, right? Both of them were accepting each other's weightages. The compromising stance of Congress and Muslim League in Lucknow Pact not only improved the relations but also proved to be an effective move towards self-rule. So the first reason why Lucknow Pact was important because of their acceptance towards each other, and this acceptance or this compromising nature of both the parties improve their relations. You need to all be very careful while writing the analysis. Point लिख के छोड़ना नहीं है. You need to write down the analysis of the points as well. If you're making a statement that it was important, why was it important? What was the consequence of it? Okay. Second reason, Congress party started to believe that the Muslim League was not a pro-British party, but just a political body that wanted to defend the rights and interests of Muslims. Now, the analysis is the recognition of Muslim League by Congress marked the first acceptance by Hindus that a degree of partition would be necessary in any self-governing India. Now, before the Lucknow Pact, the Congress had always thought of the um, Muslim League as a pro-British party. But now they were coming to realize that no, this was just a political party and they were working for their own rights as well. And they had the right to do this. So this marked the acceptance by the Hindus. And the reason why this was important, and the reason why this makes Lucknow Pact important is that they understood that some degree of acceptance and partition is important. And the last reason, the political leaders started to realize that they could only achieve their goal and progress in India if there was harmony and cooperation between Hindus and Muslims. The pact marked the high water mark of Hindu-Muslim unity. It was to be short-lived, however, as the consequence of Amritsar massacre and Khilafat movement led to a more communal approach to politics. Anyways, this is important. Why? Because the political leaders had realized that this unity was important if they had to even achieve their individual goals, Muslims wanting partition, Hindus wanting self rule, some sort of unity was still important. And this realization made this Lucknow Pact important. I hope this answer is clear. Um,
Yes.
okay, now part C. Let's see what the examiners say about this. Answers to part C were varied. The question required candidates to explain the importance of Lucknow Pact 1916. Responses showed that candidates knew some facts about Lucknow Pact, but most were limited to a level 2 mark as they merely described its features. Yeah. So if you're writing facts about Lucknow Pact, that the Muslim leaders realized that the unity was important, why? You need to describe it as well. Candidates should read the question carefully and use their knowledge in such a way that they explain the Lucknow Pact's importance rather than describe what happened. More than the description that you write, it's important that you explain the importance of it, the consequence of Lucknow Pact. Never confuse the questions that asks you for the importance of certain events with the questions that ask you for those events. Remember, description based questions and consequence analysis questions are different. This is a question that asks you to analyze the consequences. So each of the consequences that you write, for example, the ones that are written in the bold lines over here, are explaining the consequences of the Lucknow Pact, explaining the importance of the Lucknow Pact, not just the Lucknow Pact itself. Okay. So this was important for this question. Now, part D, which is a 10-mark question. To what extent had India benefited by the early 1920s from supporting Britain in the First World War? Explain your answer. This is a 10-mark response. To what extent had India benefited by the early 1920s from supporting Britain in the First World War. You're supposed to write 5 reasons for this answer. Okay. In this question, because to what extent, we get to know that this answer has to cater to both the positives and the negatives. So, to what extent did India benefited by the early 1920s from supporting Britain? We're looking at the reforms of 1920s now, the early 1920s reforms, and then we're also looking at how did India benefit? There could be successes, there could be failures as well. So if you look at the responses of 1920s, let's first of all understand what was happening. The early 1920s, what were all the reforms that were being made? You can talk about the 1919, the Montfort reforms, right? You can talk about the 1920 Khilafat movement, right? And it's majorly about Khilafat movement, by the way, if you guys notice. Because 1920s and 1924, the period here, this is the Khilafat movement period, right? This question asks you to talk about Khilafat movement here. To what extent had India benefited? Now, if we look at this particular timeline, 1920, 1924, what could be the successes? What were the benefits? Majorly, India did not benefit much. This could be our stance. It's important for you guys to understand your stance, first of all, in writing this type of an answer. So let's look at the successes or let's look at the failures first, because there could be more failures. So if you're writing 5 reasons for a 10-mark question, you can write 3 failures and 2 successes. This could be the ratio. So three failures. What can we talk about here, guys? I need your input. 1920 से 24 को अगर हम देखें, to what extent had India benefited by the early 1920s from supporting Britain? Muslims felt betrayed. Why? Because they supported British in the World War and they were expecting more reforms. Not reforms, or you could say they were expecting more concessions towards Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. And because the caliph was also removed, the caliphate system was also abolished, they felt betrayed, right? Congress was not happy. They started boycotting. Congress expecting more reforms. Congress boycott because they were expecting more reforms, and the British did not provide enough reforms. They were not happy. This was also a failure. India did not benefit much. What else, guys? We can talk about the 1919, the diarchy system, which was the voting rights were still less, right? Less voting rights, actual power still with the British. That meant that the Indians that still did not have enough power. Now, what could be the
Yeah,
two successes? Yes,
success could be that they introduced some reforms, but they were not satisfactory. That's like,
we can talk about diarchy here. Some reforms, some degree of power was given, right? That switched back to the
yeah, but
19.
they made it look like that they divided powers, but majorly the most power was with the British.
Exactly. Real power is with the British. That's what you're going to be writing in the failures. But in successes, you'll write, okay, they did make an effort to introduce reforms. And what else? One more success. Can we talk about the Hindu-Muslim unity? Somewhat unity in the Khilafat movement when they both were together, but
Yes.
just initially. I mean, they did drift apart because of their different objectives, and Hindus withdrew their support from the Khilafat movement, but initially they were together. And that proved successful. That's one of the gains out of all of these events that the India had, right? So, because there's no specific answer to this question as of now, this was a new question that came in 2021 exam paper. This is why we're curating our own answer for this. So, you guys can refer to all of these events for this answer. You can look at the Khilafat movement in detail. You can look at diarchy. You can look at the 1919 reforms and then make up an answer, this sort. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I hope the format is clear. We can look at the examiner's report now. Part D required candidates to explain the extent to which India had benefited by the early 1920s from supporting the British in the World War. Almost all candidates found this question difficult. Why? Because this was a new question. And this wasn't repeated anywhere in papers before 2001. While most responses refer to the Montfort reforms and Rowlatt Act, very few attempt to address the questions as set, which were limited to a score within level two. It is important for candidates to explain their answers rather than describe. Okay, yes, you had to refer to Montfort reforms, you had to refer to Rowlatt Act, but you also had to refer to Khilafat movement. How can you forget the very important timeline of 1920, 1924 of Khilafat movement? It is important for candidates to explain their answers rather than merely describe the events. Again, it is essential that candidates read the question carefully. Yeah, level 2 पे why were the answers limited to level 2? Because यहाँ पे if you just explain hierarchy, if you just explain the Rowlatt Act, no, that's not enough. What is the question? The question is to what extent India benefited from these reforms. So you had to, and whatever point you write, whether you're writing about hierarchy, whether you're writing about Hindu-Muslim unity, whether you're writing about Muslims feeling betrayed, you need to analyze these reasons with respect to this question. That is, okay, what were the benefits to the Indians from supporting British in the World War? If you're talking about hierarchy, you will say that the Indians felt happy because some degree of power was given to them, and this was a benefit to them. If you're talking about lesser voting rights and Montfort reforms, you're going to talk about how the Indians, after supporting British, were expecting more concessions. But in reality, the real power was still with British. The actual voting rights were still very few for the Indians, and they wanted more reward. If you're talking about Muslims feeling betrayed, you're going to talk about how when the because Muslims are also part of India, they're also Indians. Them supporting the British in World War meant that the British would in return protect the Islamic Empire, the Ottoman Empire, would protect the caliphate system. But they didn't. Hence, the Muslims felt betrayed. And what was the impact? The British Muslim relations were destroyed. And this is how India did not benefit. So, because this is what extent, right? You're going to be writing about both sides. I hope this makes sense to you guys.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. We're gonna keep this discussion to just section A for now, and we will move on to section 2 in the next lesson, which is an optional section. We'll have to pick up two questions to attempt the answers. Let me just stop the recording.